Hello everyone, Brian Kibler here with another in my constructive video series with StarCityGames.com. And as you can see on your screen, we're playing a bit more modern today. With Dragons of Tarkir still not available on Magic Online, only just having been released in the real world, or rather pre-release as it were. Modern is the only format that at least I play with any regularity that is not going to be, significantly influenced by the release of the new set. It's possible that there are some cards that have a big impact on Modern, but more than likely we won't see a huge shift in the Modern metagame based on the Dragons of Tarkir release. So I'm going to be trying out some ideas that I have for Naya, as you can see on your screen. The big difference between this version of Naya and the versions that I've played previously is the inclusion of Stormbreath Dragon compared to Thundermahalkite. Stormbreath Dragon is a card that I have played some copies of in my sideboard in previous versions, and I'm now playing it in the main deck. In the previous video, there was at one point where I actually ran into a mono-white Soul Sister style of deck where Stormbreath Dragon certainly would have been very powerful. But the primary allure of Stormbreath Dragon is the fact that it cannot be removed by Path to Exile. It's basically immune to most of the sort of popular removal effects that actually see play. So that's a pretty big sort of mark in its favor. It also happens to be incidentally quite good against Woolly Fleege deck that has mostly white creatures. It can block a Siege Rhino and live. But mostly the fact that it is immune to Path and is a big haste flyer is the attractive element to it. Compared to Thundermahalkite, it's not as effective at getting your other creatures through opposing Lingering Souls. And it also doesn't necessarily just kill opposing small flyers, which can sometimes come up against things like Affinity. But we're going to be messing around with the dragons here. Which dragon do we play? It's really with Dragons of Tarkir, it seems appropriate to be basically just trying to decide which dragons that I'm playing, not whether I'm playing dragons at all. The other sort of change here is that I'm playing a couple of copies of Thalia in the sideboard. Thalia is an interesting card because it's not really a great sort of hoser style card in terms of the fact that most decks that are vulnerable to Thalia can also remove Thalia. It's not like a card like Rule of Law that will basically single-handedly beat a deck. However, Thalia is a good disruptive tool against a lot of different strategies that can often buy you time to just kill your opponent, to just deal damage to them, and sometimes that's all you need. So here we have a couple copies of Thalia. They're replacing a couple of other things, like I had an additional copy, additional Planeswalker in the sideboard. And here, we're going to be giving this a shot as part of our sort of hate cards. One of the things that I've run into in the sort of previous iterations of this deck that when I've been playing for my videos is that basically if an opponent's deck is not vulnerable to Blood Moon, and it is a sort of unfair style of deck, then I find that this deck can frequently struggle because you don't really have much else in the way of actual disruption. And I think that Thalia adds a little bit of sort of wide purpose disruptive element that can be used against whether decks like Storm or Infect or even Burn. Burn can actually be somewhat vulnerable to Thalia because they often rely on casting multiple spells in a turn or casting their spells on time. Thalia can stop them from being able to do significant damage with Swift Spear. It can get in the way of Goblin Guide. It can stop Eidolon. So it's I think a pretty effective card. Not necessarily, again, the best option in lots of different matchups, but a reasonable card in a number of them. And that's one of the things sometimes that you want in Modern, because the format is so broad. If you have a generically strong deck, sometimes you want individual powerful sort of slam dunk sideboard cards, things like Blood Moon or Stony Silence. But sometimes you want to have things that are increasing your percentage on a wider range of different things. And I think that Thalia is one of those. And I think that for a deck like this, you have Blood Moon, which is your sort of haymaker sideboard card in a lot of matchups, and you want something that can sort of cover the sort of broad scope of the other things you might run into. And I think Thalia may be a good option for that. That's the reason we're trying it out. So anyway, that's pretty much it. This is very similar to the deck that I've been playing for a couple of videos now. Just want to experiment with a number of small changes, and I think that's an important thing. A lot of times people will just jump from deck to deck, and I think that tweaking the various tools that you are using in a particular sort of shell that you have at least some amount of success with is a pretty important way to sort of develop a better version of that deck for the metagame. So anyway, let's give it a shot and see how things go.